Hello, you're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Ali Milani.
And me, Zoë Grünewald.
Coming up on the show, we'll be talking to political reporter Tom Scotson about the secret relocation of thousands of Afghans to the UK after a major data breach at the MOD. Plus, we'll be discussing the backlash over Superman's immigrant storyline, Labour minister suspended over rebellions votes, and the voting age being set to drop to 16. We'll also talk about Donald Trump's calls of the Epstein scandals as a hoax, even turning on his own supporters.
As always, you can find us at Politics Uncensored UK on social media, and all that and more coming up later in the programme.
But first, it's the Week Unwrapped.
Labour has suspended 4 MPs after they defied the party to vote against welfare cuts in a growing row over benefit reforms. Rachel Maskell and 3 others lost the whip and will now sit as independents, while 3 more MPs were stripped of trade envoys. The rebellion by 47 Labour MPs forced the government to water down its plans, but it's left Keir Starmer's authority under pressure. Is Labour at risk of a deeper split? Ali, what do you make of this? I mean, to me, it felt like the government had just faced down the rebels on the welfare stuff. They sort of had their tails tucked between their legs. They thought maybe we got this wrong. And as soon as the coast is clear, bang, out the door, 4 rebels, no place for you in the party. Doesn't that somewhat undermine their U-turn on the welfare stuff?
Yeah, it does. This of all of the whipping problems that they've had, this seems the most spiteful. Because it's very difficult to argue that you're removing the whip from MPs for rebelling when you have yourself U-turned on that policy and recognised that it wasn't the right way to go, at least publicly. I was in Parliament when this happened, and I can tell you, backbench MPs specifically are seething. They're really, really angry at the way that the government has dealt with this, largely because it wasn't the typical opponents or critics of Keir Starmer that rebelled. It was much broader than that this time. And the feeling from MPs is that the management of the Parliamentary Labour Party from number 10 is atrociously poor. MPs on the backbenches feel the PM has done nowhere near enough to kind of speak to them, gain their views and their expertise from their constituencies. But also he's now lashing out after being embarrassed in Parliament over this welfare bill. And all it's doing is loosening his grip on the PLP. I think this is a really poor political move because he's already got the problem. And look, the major problem that number 10 has that I think they've identified, and maybe partly why they're doing this, is there's a load of MPs who have correctly recognise that they're one-term MPs no matter what, that they're not going to get elected in 2029. They're looking at the polling and going, forget about my seat, it's another 100 that we're going to lose. So those are the ones that Labour won in 2024 as a result of A, reform, and B, the collapsing Tory vote. And those MPs know that they're not coming back. And so they've gotten a bit of weird courage out of it, going, well, I'm only here for one term, so I might as well do what I believe in. So in that sense, number 10 has more of a whipping problem with these MPs because it's harder to threaten people who know they're not going to come back to Parliament as MPs. But the way to do it is certainly not to go around removing the whip from people who have rebelled, particularly on a welfare issue that then you yourself U-turned on.
So talk to me about the timing of this. Obviously, it's pretty much...
Yeah, also, why would you do it right before recess? It's so stupid.
Well, that's my question. Is it because political news dies down, MPs go back to their constituencies, they're not all together in the building, so they can't all sit around and conspire?
Yeah.
You know, they can organise on WhatsApp, but there's no other votes.
But then why wouldn't you do it on Tuesday when recess actually starts? Why would you give the Sunday, for example, the Sunday political shows now have something to talk about? It's again, it's a little bit amateurish, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they think they'll go with the least amount of fuss at this stage in the political calendar. But I think it just is how it looks, you know. The welfare row was so public and embarrassing, and it had such high levels of support from the public.
Yeah,
and the climb down was humiliating. So to climb down and then sort of go, it's like when you fall out with somebody and you have to go and apologise to them. Like, fall out with your brother and you have to go apologise to him. And then as soon as mum's gone, you turn around and say, but I was right there.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like, why do you have to get the last word? And is this an appropriate way to govern a party?
So there's traditionally two reasons why you remove the whip. One is for the party's reputation. Someone says something stupid, you remove the whip to distance the party as a whole with that person. And the second one is whip discipline. So what you want to do is send a message to everyone else that if you defy the whip, then we'll remove the whip, in essence. The problem is I don't think that this is certainly not the first one. On the second one, I'm not sure this is going to encourage more unity behind the whip. I think, if anything, this is actually pissed off quite a lot of Labour MP, which is why I think this is out of spite. I think this is number 10 who are embarrassed. And because do you remember right after that welfare vote, the other thing that they had come out and said was that the 2-child limit isn't now going to be we're not going to be able to deal with that because you've done this. So it's sort of punishment to the MPs.
Felt spiteful.
Yeah. It's, do you know what I described it as the other day in a WhatsApp group with MPs? Ironically enough, I said, to me, this comes across as a boxer who's headed for the mat, throwing a last haymaker. And unfortunately, I think Keir Starmer's premiership is headed for the mat.
So let's just quickly on these specific MPs who lost the whip. So we had Brian Leishman, Chris Hinchcliffe, Neil Duncan-Jordan and Rachel Maskell. I wouldn't say they're particularly well-known Labour MPs.
Did you hear what they called Rachel Maskell, by the way?
No.
A knobhead?
Oh, I did.
They used that language. Did you? I think she was read it by Ian Dale on LBC.
I saw that.
Yeah, they said apparently the source from Number 10 said she had the whip removed for repeated knobheadery or something. Which again, it's just it's
because she's been defiant on the 2-child benefit cap, and she's been defiant on the welfare stuff. I mean, I'd say out of all of those, Rachel Maskell is probably the most well known because she's been so vocal. Yeah. But why these specific MPs and not, say, any of the others who have been vocal about
I mean, the argument they've used is for persistently defying the whip. I don't really know what that means, but they've also probably picked 4 people that they think they can pick on. The Rachel Maskell one is interesting because I don't know if you saw, there was a clip of her giving a speech at a rally where she was very pro-migration. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. That went around quite a lot. Stinks a little bit that this happened at the same time as that, for me, when the government is working so hard to be anti migration and talking so much about removals and deportations and really chasing reform on some of this talk around refugees and migration. That video of her drops, and then she's had the whip withdrawn for different reasons a little bit later. Smells funny to me.
Okie doke. All right, well, let's move on. 16 and 17-year-olds will be able to vote in the next general election in what ministers call a seismic change to the UK's democracy. Around 1.5 million voters will gain back the right to vote under Labour's new elections bill, which also allows bank cards as voter ID and crackdowns on foreign donations. The Tories say the move hasn't had proper scrutiny, but Labour insists it gives young taxpayers a real say in their future. Will this reshape the political landscape? Ali, what are your immediate reactions to this? I mean, it was a manifesto commitment, right? So, and we've spoken about it on the show before. I've already seen right-wing commentators say this is cynical, this is just, a last-ditch attempt to get some more voter support. No, it was in the manifesto. Yeah. So let's just...
People vote for it,
Let's... now when Keir Starmer doesn't U-turn on something, everybody thinks it's cynical, but yeah.
Well, a massive 34% of the country gave this a mandate. Now, this is, I don't get a lot of opportunities to praise the Labour government. As a former Labour councillor, Labour parliamentary candidate and current Labour member, I don't get a huge chance, haven't had in the first year, to celebrate. I think this is really good. Something I've been campaigning on, I think, for at least 8 or 9 years. It's a travesty, I think, that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds pay taxes, they go to work, and they go to work and pay taxes, the other way around, and then they should have a say in how those taxes are spent. It's the fundamentals of democracy. And, the argument is usually, they don't have the maturity or, I guess, the political intellect to vote at that age, but fuck me, if Lee Anderson has the intellect to vote, a 16-year-old does.
Yeah, and I know plenty of pensioners who I wish there was an upper
Yeah,
limit.
we know you hate pensioners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know all pensioners.
Yeah, Zoe's war on pensioners continues. No, but it's true. I mean, if Rupert Lowe, Lee Anderson, and Nigel Farage have the intellect, I know at least hundreds of 16-year-olds with more IQ levels than them.
So I want to ask you about this, because this is already a debate that people are having, which is that it used to be, the received wisdom was, if you gave 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote, that would bump up Labour's support base, because young voters tend to be more progressive. But now people are saying, actually, is that going to give Farage a boost?
Yeah.
Because we're seeing increasingly a shift of young, particularly male voters, turning towards reform.
We are.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the voting intentions of 16-year-olds, because I saw it today. A poll was released, and here it is. So voting intentions for 16 and 17-year-olds. So Labour on 33%, Reform on 20%, and then the Greens on 18%. So Labour does lead, but not by that much. It's obviously massively declined under Keir Starmer's premiership. But so the view is, yes, younger people tend to lean left. That's certainly true. Younger people tend to lean more progressive, more pluralistic in society. But it is certainly true that there is a massive upshift amongst the sort of alt-far right or /reform, whatever you want to call them. That's not just true here, in America as well. What's really interesting to me is that is if you're a nerd and you delve into the data, it is a uniquely male thing. So young men, I think you mentioned, right?
They're attracting more young men than they are young women.
By like massive margins, by the way. So.
And it was the same with Trump for a while as well in the US, although we did see a slight shift of more women voting for Trump, young women voting for Trump this time. I think, if you add those numbers for the Green voting intention and the Labour voting intention together, what you still get is overwhelmingly young people looking to place their vote more in a progressive left-wing space than they are for the right. But
if you combine Labour and the Greens, which I'm not sure you'd want to at this stage, but it sits at over 50%, right?
Yeah, 40, exactly. 50, What about the Tories?
They're on 10%. Lib Dems on 12%, and then others.
Who are the young people voting Tory? I mean, if you are that way inclined,
we had one of them on. You weren't here that week. Yeah, he was downing pints in different pubs.
If you're that way inclined, why would you just not vote Reform? Like, it doesn't. What are you voting for? You're voting for them not to build you houses. You're voting for Boris Johnson, who was the only relatively charismatic, and I say that with choking back vomit.
Your Boris Johnson smells.
Oh, does he?
I've been trying to get that rumour going for like 5 years. It's not mine. Yeah.
Is it true?
Allegedly.
Okay.
By the way, that 10% is fascinating. I would love to be, because I met one, but he was having a pint and it was hard to get a word, get some reasonable stuff out of him. But that 10%, what are you doing?
Like, what is it that you think the Tories are offering you? I think it's just
bow ties and
I think it
Bullingdon
is probably
stuff.
A class thing. Yeah. But it's very bizarre to me.
Do you know what's really interesting? I don't know if we have time. Britain is really unique in that historically, we, more than any other country that I've certainly ever been in or campaigned in or worked in, we pass voting patterns down by families. So, like, you'll knock on doors and people are like, I vote Labour because my family's always voted Labour. That seems to be disappearing entirely.
I think as well, when people go to university, that's when they might... for example, where I grew up, a lot of people voted Conservative in the area I grew up. Although it was a Labour constituency, Wakefield, there was a Conservative voting cohort. And a lot of those people, when they went to university and broadened their horizons, they no longer, just because their parents had always voted Tory, they didn't.
Did that happen to you?
No. My parents were all Labour. In fact, no. I mean, I'm sure my dad won't mind me saying this. My dad's side are proper lefties.
Oh, nice.
Proper lefties. They do not like Keir Starmer.
Oh, really?
No. So
lefties not liking Keir Starmer.
My mum's side are probably more Blairite-y.
Right.
But it's Labour. Still Labour. It's Labour through and through. Yeah.
Okay. But most of your friends would have been Tories, I imagine.
Yeah,
or their families were.
Yeah. But no, I think this is a really good thing. I think what is important is it needs to be accompanied with more political civil education in schools, because otherwise what you get are young people just focusing on what they hear on social media. Yeah,
it'd be really interesting to see the turnout for the first time that happens. Do we know, I know it was introduced in the House today, will it come in time for the 26th elections? The 2026 elections?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
It will be here for the next general election.
But not for the locals?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think
I'm interested to see what the turnout will look like.
Yeah. It will be fascinating. But yeah, I think absolutely no taxation without representation.
Yeah, you just can't pay income tax without having a say in how that income tax is spent.
And you
It's
can
just
join the
ludicrous.
army, you can have a baby. You know, you can have, what is it, like 2 glasses of wine with your meal? Or some,
Can you actually?
Well, some strange rule about alcohol.
Another thing that happened in Wakefield.
Yeah. In Wakefield, you can have as much wine as you want. With your okay, let's move on across the pond to Donald Trump, who is now facing backlash from his own base after lashing out at Republicans who believe in what he calls the Epstein bullshit. The president blamed stupid GOP allies for falling for hoaxes, sparking anger amongst loyalists and dividing his MAGA coalition. With polls showing strong public demand for the Epstein files, this obviously refers to Jeffrey Epstein, Trump's mixed messages are now fueling suspicion. Could they cost him support heading into the 2026 midterms? And could this controversy deepen fractures within the Republican Party? Ali, let's just start by quickly just where are we with Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, obviously, he's dead.
Yeah.
But, like, how does this involve Donald Trump, for those who might not be aware?
So the Jeffrey Epstein story has been a huge part of the alt-right Trump MAGA bases. I want to call it conspiracy theory, but in this case, it's not really a conspiracy theory because we know that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in lots of different crimes and misconduct and other things, right? And historically, there has been a sort of conspiracy theory that there is a list somewhere, sort of Jeffrey Epstein's black book of all the celebrities that were involved, because he had his little island and he had his Lolita Express, what did they call it?
Yeah.
The plane that he would get on. And the conspiracy theory online, and I'm not using conspiracy theory in a way to diminish or say that this isn't true, because it probably is true, that there is a list somewhere of all these celebrities and high-ranking officials who were in some way involved in these crimes. And it's something that Trump and senior members of the MAGA establishment have very consistently played to about releasing the Epstein list, this being that black book list of like celebrities and high-ranking officials who are involved.
Yeah.
So that's been a major part of the MAGA thing for a long time.
And it's just worth saying that Donald Trump, one of his executive orders was to demand the government made the documents relating to Jeffrey Epstein public.
Yeah.
And that and some have been, so that includes things like flight logs, a redacted contact book, and an evidence list. But what specifically they think
is
this list of names.
Yeah, it's the black book. Yeah. And Trump has played to it, and so have his senior surrogates for a really long time. What's changed is that now Trump is saying that, they said they're not going to release, or a list doesn't exist, which is interesting because the Attorney General said the list was on her desk. And now she says it doesn't exist, and that this whole thing is a hoax. And what's happened now is Trump has received unprecedented... Now, Trump is pretty Teflon, but he is now for the first time receiving unprecedented resistance from his own base, because he's not only said it's not true, he said it's boring, he doesn't know why people are talking about it, people need to get over it, he's saying it doesn't exist, the Attorney General is doing a good job. And let me just read to you. So, you know Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh is a sort of right-wing commentator online, pretty weird guy, but very pro-Trump. And he has tweeted, Trump has decided suddenly, after years of saying the opposite, that the Epstein files are a hoax, boring, they don't matter, and anyone who talks about them is a bad person and a weakling. He's entitled to his opinion, but the idea that conservatives are obligated to also change on a dime and adopt this new perspective along with him is just madness. It's not even possible. I can't just decide not to care about an issue even if I wanted to, and I don't want to. So people like Matt Walsh are starting to turn on him. And I think you can see it's rattled Trump because, first of all, Trump is very easy to rattle, but his little orange face gets all over the place, particularly when his base get to him. And this is, I would say, since 2016, when Trump got elected and then re-elected in 2024, this is the most significant resistance he's faced from his own base. Because this goes to show you can't propagate a conspiracy theory as a candidate.
Well, it's really testing the limits of Trump's power. I mean, for a while, he was like Teflon, and it was like he could say anything and row back on it the next day, and it just seemed to wash with his supporters. But now maybe this is the thing that starts to unpick some of those threads, because Trump made such political hay out of this. I mean, he basically smeared Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and the whole Clinton dynasty with the fact that they were associated with Epstein, right? We knew Trump was there's pictures. I'm right.
Yeah,
I think there's pictures of Trump with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
But it's now all the leading his MAGA fans up the mountain, and then going, oh, actually, no, nothing to see here.
Yeah.
And they're all stood up there with their pitchforks and their their big headdresses ready to break into the Pentagon.
And he's like,
oh, never mind.
Never mind, it's boring. Stop talking about it. Yeah, and they're starting to turn, and they're getting really, really angry. And I think he recognises that, because I think today he has suggested about appointing a special prosecutor to investigate it. Why would you need to have a special... If the list exists... And this is the interesting part. I think the Attorney General said the list was on her desk. And now she's saying the list doesn't exist. So it's only further, fanning the flame of a potential conspiracy that might be going on at the heart of government to protect the rich, the powerful politicians.
Just before we go to the break, I just want to read out a bit of one of his Truth Social posts.
Here we go. Brace yourselves.
Okay, he says... What's going on with my boys, and in some cases gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years is Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving his publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, and the losers and the criminals of the Biden administration?
It's all the greatest hits. Keep going.
They created the Epstein files just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier. If there was anything in there that would hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't even given up on the John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. file. I mean, it's the ramblings of a madman. The absolute ramblings of a madman.
It's all a hoax.
It's all a hoax. Nothing
Let's
to do
go
with
to the
me.
break.
So, anyway, going very well in Trumpland. We'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully when we speak to you guys next week, it's all over. Okay, coming up, we're going to be speaking to Tom Scotson, political reporter at PoliticsHome, all about the secret relocation of thousands of Afghans to the UK after a major data breach. This is a huge story this week. We'll be chatting about that next on Politics Uncensored.
Politics Uncensored with Ali Milani and Zoë Grünewald on FUBAR Radio.
Death, a funny business on FUBAR Radio with Becky Briggs and Natasha Spencer-Levy.
We store so much of our trauma and our energy in our body. I am just incredibly tired of keeping this trauma locked inside my body. And so all I needed to do is release it. You know, it's like going on a bender and drinking too much booze and you throw it up because you just need to get that out of your system, because it's gonna catch up with you at some point if you don't.
You're listening to FUBAR Radio.
Download our app now to listen to your favourite shows, such as Access All Areas, Politics Uncensored, and The Dating Show. You can also download and catch up on previous episodes of all FUBAR shows, including our box sets. Plus, you can get in touch directly from within the app.
Just search for FUBAR Radio on the Apple and Google App Stores.
The FUBAR Radio app. Get it today.
Get it today.
I was fine on this beach the other day. I didn't know the time of high tide changes, and I had no idea it could come in so fast. So I'm finding out the hard way. From this fella, the Coast Guard, who dropped in to get me out.
Ready!
Before you go to the coast, check the tide times online. In an emergency, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
Some companies try to reel people in by promising quick cash if you pay them to claim work expenses. But think twice before taking the bait, because they might just want to land a commission, and it turns out you aren't eligible to claim anything. You'll have to pay HMRC back, and it's unlikely the company will refund any fees. So don't get caught out. Check if you're eligible and make a claim with HMRC for free online. Just search "Don't Get Caught Out."
Access All Areas with Bobby Norris.
We are joined by Miss Safia. If I could produce you a salt, what is he like on paper? Sound like we're on Love Island.
Okay, on paper, my type has to have a good soul, good purpose and calm energy. I'm in my energy era where you've just got to come in and make me happy. I don't need you for anything. I wanna find happiness, and I need him to be kind.
Pulse of the Nation with Andrew White on FUBAR Radio.
Are you aware of the tea alarm?
Tell me more.
Yeah, so it's this cultural phenomenon that we have in Britain. It's an alarm at 3 p.m. Where everybody in the UK has to have a cup of tea, and if you miss it by a certain number of minutes, you get fined, basically.
This ain't real. This is not real. This is not real. I'm not playing into this.
Yeah.
You think me watching Keeping Up Appearances, you think Mrs. Bouquet was missing a 3 o'clock tea alarm? Y'all won't get me.
Follow us at Politics Uncensored UK for more from the show.
You're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Ali Milani.
And me, Zoë Grünewald. Now, thousands of Afghans were quietly relocated to the UK under a secret government scheme following a serious data breach that exposed nearly 19,000 names to potential Taliban reprisal. A judge has now lifted the unprecedented super injunction that kept the episode hidden from us, from the press and from Parliament for over 2 years. And with the scheme shut down and questions swirling over the accountability and transparency, could this leak mark one of the costliest security failures in recent British history? Well, joining us now to speak about the topic is Tom Scotson, political reporter at PoliticsHome and well-known face in Westminster, so he knows all about the comings and goings. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. The first thing I want to ask you is just give us a sense of how this story has gone down in Westminster, because when you dig into it, it's huge. Like the level of detail, the fact that this was kept from everybody, the fact that journalists were aware but they couldn't say anything. Now it's out in the open. What are people saying?
No, thank you, Zoe, and thank you for having me on. Apologies about the cold that I've got, and hopefully your listeners won't be irritated by it. So how it's gone down in Westminster, it's very different to the general public. I think we saw some YouGov polling that came out that showed that general public weren't as bothered about it as we probably expected. But in Westminster, I think that this kind of shows that maybe the rot in the government and Whitehall and, potential huge cover-up. As you're saying, this is potentially going to cost the government and the taxpayer £7 billion. I mean, that is not short change. Just for perspective, the welfare cuts the government was about to make in its reform bill would have cost around £5 billion, which is a huge sum. So it surpasses that. I think MPs are rightly shocked, but within it, it seems relatively apolitical, the criticism. I think that we'll probably have to wait until a few weeks and months until there's real scrutiny on certain ministers that comes up. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of disgust and, quite frankly, a huge shock from many of the new intake of the Labour MPs.
Tom, thanks for joining us. I feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit with this story because it's so backwards to me. A lot, other than Lewis and others who I think themselves have reported it really well, lots of leading journalists and media organizations are presenting this story as a migration issue, like we've secretly relocated all these Afghans. For me, obviously that's part of the story, but a major part of the story is an MOD breach put 19,000 Afghans at risk of being tortured and killed because of a data breach in the MOD. And, that was then tried to be covered up. Do we know if anyone was actually killed, tortured, and or otherwise had reprisals against them by the Taliban? By the way, these were 19,000 Afghans who worked with the British Armed Forces, like translators and other things. Do we know if anyone was killed or not?
I mean, according to the BBC, there's no confirmation that anyone has been killed as a result. But I guess this is, early days since the super injunction was lifted. It's only 2 or 3 days since that was happened. But again, put it in perspective that, as you said, that 19,000 people directly impacted. Some seen that 100,000 people up to that could be also impacted. So this is relatives, family and friends. But on top of that, the Times reported just recently that this could affect own British spies and personnel that were already out there and working in this country. I mean, that is a huge shock domestically as well as internationally.
And what are the implications to our democracy? Because I read Lewis's long thing on Substack, and one of the most interesting bits that I caught from that was while this was being discussed on Afghan Facebook groups, our journalists here weren't allowed to talk about it. And not only were they not allowed to talk about it, they weren't allowed to talk about the fact they weren't allowed to talk about it, if that makes sense. That's what the super injunction is. As a journalist, you're a journalist who works in Westminster, what is your faith level in our democracy after this story?
I mean, it really tests it hugely. As you said, that people on the other side of the world were allowed to talk about this story while we were told, obviously, we'd face prison as a result. And even if politicians had raised it in their House of Commons, I think it was quite clearly that they'd have been seen it as a martyr and potentially faced reprisals. I think that, obviously it raises questions, not just for journalists or MPs, about what other potential scandals there could be that aren't that are potentially being hidden by the British state. So obviously it's increasingly worrying, and maybe we might not expect this to be the only case, but yeah, it's increasingly concerning, and I think this is going to be a story that's going to run on for many weeks, if not months.
The other thing that I'm not going to ask you to comment on, because I myself couldn't comment on it either because it's quite complicated, is that we're supposed to have something called parliamentary privilege, which means, as you just alluded to, MPs can stand up and say, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to talk about this footballer cheating on his wife, but I can say it, haha, because I'm protected by parliamentary privilege. But it seems in this case, actually, they wouldn't have been able to, which I think raises questions for Parliament as well about why it is
why wouldn't they be able to?
Well, because of the super injunction. This is why.
Does that apply in parliamentary privilege?
Well,
as well?
exactly.
Okay.
This is a big, complicated question for clerks. I think they need to figure that out. But I guess the other, you said this is an apolitical issue because it's, although it started under one government, obviously it's extended into a different government run by a different party. But people love to throw blame around in Westminster. Where is the blame falling? I mean, who I noticed at PMQs yesterday, Keir Starmer straight off the back spoke about it, but then Kerry Badenoch did not. So what is the feeling about where the buck stops?
I feel the blame, if it's going to fall on anyone, and this is mainly on social media and more high-profile journalists, targeting Ben Wallace, who applied for the super injunction initially. So he's probably the one that is the main figurehead.
So he's the former defence minister, former defence secretary. Yeah. Former
defence secretary, very well respected, particularly within Tory circles. He was once seen as a potential leader of the party before he declared that he wasn't running for leadership after Boris Johnson resigned in 2022. So I think I think we'll probably find out over the weekend, when huge news stories probably expected in the Sunday papers, of where it will fall. But it doesn't seem that Labour, unlike other issues, are going to use this as a real political attack line against the Tories, because I think they see that this isn't just a party political issue, but something that's really wired into the British
Well, Labour
state.
can't, right? Because Labour maintained the super injunction.
Yeah. I mean, of course, John Healey did say that he pushed for this behind the scenes to be revoked. Obviously, of course, couldn't say it publicly. But I think it's unsure, and I think it'll probably become clearer within the weeks of more of the details.
Can I ask the implications globally for Britain as well, right? Because if you are, I don't know, in Syria or in Taiwan or in other places where there is always risks of, I mean, Taiwan there isn't, but there's risks of regime change and you're working with British forces, why would you risk your own life and your own family's future by working with British forces in the future if you're at risk of things like this happening? Could this not damage Britain's sort of ability around the world to garner the support of locals and influence and other things?
I mean, it's a really good point, because I guess that we've seen with huge events where we think they're going to have massive implications at the time, rarely impact world politics within a couple of years. And I think some of them, that places like the Iraq War and the financial crisis, did seem huge, but now are having even bigger impacts in our politics, particularly with how we see foreign wars and, of course, with anemic growth, respectively. Whereas this, as you say, that could be an issue now where, do people trust Britain now? Do they trust the British state? We're seen as quite a dispassionate, very sober, well-trusted Western ally. But then if people can't trust us in real war zones, then maybe they will bypass us now, and this will only accelerate.
And let's talk about the political context in which this whole thing happened. So all the years blur into one. But 2022, when that happened, so we would have been in the final part of the Boris Johnson era, right? A government flailing around, losing support, stoking up fears about immigration, trying to make that its key issue. And then this happens where they put 19,000 lives at risk in Afghanistan, and they have to set up a secret route, safe and legal route. Well, that wouldn't have played very well politically. Is there a feeling that some of the secrecy was, I think, understandable in that, if they had been reporting about this, it might have alerted the Taliban to it. But is there a feeling that maybe some of the secrecy, allowing it to go on for quite so long, 2 years, was because it would have been politically inconvenient to admit that this scheme had been set up?
I think potentially, for sure. As you said, that at the time that Boris Johnson was really on the ropes, even though he had an 80-seat majority, that it looked like he could fall at any moment. And when the Chris Pincher scandal, so his former chief whip, happened to resign, then of course that caused a domino effect and tumbled his government. But I would say at the moment, I think that it's probably too early to tell or even analyse that whether that was one of the reasons, because I feel that Westminster is still in shock at the moment at this scandal. It just feels on an order of magnitude so much bigger than kind of any story that's happened in the last year, and it's not been a quiet year of politics. So I think maybe over the next weeks and even by the end of the year, we'll probably be able to tell the clearer picture. But for now, there's no real clear dispassionate analysis coming out because it is such a shocking story.
Yeah, another part of the detail of the story that I found fascinating, by the way, was the fact, and this is for both of you, because I'm not a journalist, you guys are journalists, but even in the court, Lewis recalls that there were large parts of the proceedings in which the government's lawyers would go into a secret session with the judge, away from even the journalists and their lawyers. And so the journalists couldn't even hear the testimony that was being given directly to the judge. It's just all so shady that I just wonder whether, as journalists, you both think, this could happen to my stories, and then if I can't subscribe because I have no evidence of political intent behind squashing the stories, but you could easily see a nefarious actor one day at number 10 who may, or a government who may use nefarious actions to squash political stories with super injunctions. How much does that concern either of you guys, that that a sort of Pandora's box is now opened where stories can be squashed and silenced?
I mean, just speaking for myself, I guess that we've all had those kind of awful evenings where press officers ring you in the middle of the night, try and quash a story, and obviously it's a scary feeling. I mean, nothing on this kind of level and global impact. But I guess, I think that everyone should be alert to what the government could do with press freedom, and it is such an important value to have, obviously tied in with freedom of speech and freedom of expression. But I think the more concerning part is that there's going to be no one to push back on this, right? I mean, the YouGov polling that came out, that very little people cared or didn't know about the story happening. And I guess that there isn't a huge public backlash to this and wanting to uphold press freedom and really investigate into these crucial stories.
But the politicians, the politicians themselves didn't seem to care, other than you mentioned, right, Keir Starmer addressing it off the bat at PMQs. I think I watched all of PMQs. I don't remember a single question about it.
Did Ed Davey?
No, Ed Davey asked about Gaza, didn't he? And
he had a question before. He said he would support a public inquiry.
Oh, a public inquiry, that's correct.
I think it was the judge who offered the super injunction. So you have to, and I think the reason for that was because there was a sense of this could be very, very dangerous for all those individuals. And I think on that level you can understand, Lewis Goodall and the other journalists who were involved said, when they were told by the MOD, we're going to have to do this, and brought to the court, they understood the need to keep it secret because it was such high sensitivity. The issue was that it went on for so many years, and that is why I think we do have to question the politics around the decision, because once it was ascertained that they were safe and the list was contained or whatever, and the scheme was in action, at that point Parliament should have scrutinised that public spending and that decision and that data leak.
Tom, can I ask one last question? Has anyone lost their job over this? Is there any accountability over the leak itself? Because we've had data breaches from private companies before, and they get fat fines and people get sacked and moved on. But this has put potentially 100,000 people's lives at risk. Has anyone lost their job?
I mean, it doesn't appear so. I mean, people were joking in Westminster that they've probably been promoted by now. So, and it's only been a couple of years. So I think this is probably really cuts to the heart of it, that the lack of transparency, the lack of details of who leaked it, when they leaked it specifically, on what platform, and the repercussions. And I think that's probably, for me personally, where we start to question this, of course, the system at Whitehall, and where the root of the problem comes. So it's very concerning.
Yeah, it's Whitehall, the home of failing upwards, isn't it?
One final question from me, Tom. Any super injunctions on you that we should know about?
Oh God, I hope not. Not that I know of, anyway.
Okay.
Have you ever had just a question, either of you? Have you ever had a story stopped from coming out? You don't have to say what the story is, but that didn't get released.
I didn't get many stories, hence why I'm not still working around Westminster. But Tom, you've had some good scoops.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple that I've had a lot of press pushed back anyway. I had one. It was a government bill. It was a football regulator, which seems innocuous, but it was going to stop us of one clause of competing in the World Cup, which got a huge lot of blowback from the civil service. It was later proved by the Times, so I felt vindicated. But that was probably the closest I've come to real heat.
Nice.
I'll tell you both a story. I know we don't got much time, but it may make you both laugh. When I was a candidate in 2019, I went to a conference about health, and then in like a movie, I was in the bathroom stall and someone followed me and left a document for me with a note on it that said, please read this. And it was a document about this crazy document about how the government was planning to completely privatize the NHS and get rid of it as a free point of view stuff. I took it to John McDonnell, who was Shadow Chancellor at the time, and be like, someone's leaked me something. This is going to win us the... This is crazy, right? And I'm like, I'm going to tweet it. And he went, calm down. Can you go to check that it's real now? I was like, of course it's real. They give it to me in a bathroom. People don't give you things in a bathroom that aren't real. Turns out it was fucking bullshit and someone was trying to have me. But if it hadn't been for him, I would have tweeted it out. But I've learned since then.
You can always keep it in your back pocket.
I still have it.
It might be useful.
Yeah, I'll bring it
Okay, listen, Tom, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure. That was Tom Scotson, a political reporter at PoliticsHome, telling us all about that crazy story about the Afghans being relocated to the UK under secrecy and a major data breach. Coming up next, we're for some reason going to be giving Ali full steam to talk about Superman.
Let's go.
I didn't agree to this, but apparently he's found a political angle for it. So
that's right. We're going to talk about the Man of Steel, the Man of Tomorrow, Big Blue.
Okay, stay with us.
FUBAR Radio.
Couple Goals with Sophie Kasai and Jordan Brooke.
When I've met people in the past, I'm like, oh yeah, I really love him, he's the one. But I just knew they weren't. I'd say it, but I knew I didn't mean it. But when I met you, there was a different feeling. Like, it's like your gut just tells you. When people used to say, when you know, you know, I was like, oh, piss off. But when you know, you know.
When I met you and times got hard, I would come up with a strategy to make it better.
You're listening to FUBAR Radio.
Download our app now to listen to your favourite shows, such as Access All Areas, Politics Uncensored, and The Dating Show. You can also download and catch up on previous episodes of all FUBAR shows, including our box sets. Plus, you can get in touch directly from within the app.
Just search for FUBAR Radio on the Apple and Google App Stores.
The FUBAR Radio app. Get it today.
Get it today.
1 in 5 people in the UK are disabled, and it's not always visible. So if we've made ourselves at home in priority spaces on the bus or train, surrounded by our shopping bags or bikes, we could be making it harder for the people who need that space more than us. So let's not forget about the people we share our journeys with, and keep priority spaces clear for others. Remember, it's everyone's journey.
When it comes to heart attacks, you might be surprised to hear the symptoms don't always feel severe. You could experience a squeezing across the chest, a feeling of unease, a sense something's not quite right. Don't be tempted to dismiss the signs and wait to see what happens. The faster you seek medical help, the better your chances. It's never too early to call 999 and describe your symptoms. Your NHS is here for you.
Death, a funny business on FUBAR Radio with Becky Briggs and Natasha Spencer-Levy.
So we've got Dr. Matt Morgan. Someone's heart stopped beating for 8 hours.
So he was stuck on a ledge in a freezing snowstorm, and his heart stopped for an amazing 9 hours. He's still the world's longest surviving cardiac arrest patient, and he lived because he was cold. You know, there's a saying, you're not dead until you're warm and dead.
That Money Show with Gabriel Nussbaum on FUBAR Radio.
Let's go back to the beginning. A mortgage advisor. What does a mortgage advisor do?
So, the main purpose of a mortgage advisor is to help you to achieve the best possible mortgage solution on time and first time. Typically, in the modern day, it's somebody who's going to hold your hand through the full home buying process, liaising with solicitors, estate agents, helping with insurance, and being in your corner, on your team to make sure you achieve that goal.
It's Ali Milani and Zoë Grünewald with Politics Uncensored. FUBAR Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Ali Milani.
And me, Zoë Grünewald. Okay, so the new Superman film is drawing fire from right-wing critics over what they call super woke, see what you did there, messaging. All because director James Gunn described the hero as an immigrant. Just wait till they see Paddington. But fans and scholars say Superman has always been one, and despite the backlash, the film is breaking box office expectations and doubling down on themes of kindness, not politics. So, is this outrage manufactured, or is the Man of Steel really being recast for a new America? Ali, I don't know. I'm not seeing the film. I know who Superman is. Mm-hmm. I know what an immigrant is.
Yep.
I've heard of James Gunn.
Yes.
My knowledge on this ends there.
Okay, so let me give you the brief, right? So, look, there's been meltdown on social media since pretty much about a week before this film came out, because James Gunn said he's an immigrant, and obviously the very notion of an immigrant has sent people...
Where's James Gunn from?
James Gunn's American. So James Gunn said...
Oh, he said that Superman...
Oh, yeah, he didn't say himself as an American.
Yeah.
He basically told a story about how Superman being an immigrant to Earth is a central part of this story. And the whole story of this film, it was originally called Superman Legacy because it was... The question was whether he closer feels towards his Kryptonian heritage, Krypton being the planet he's from, or whether he feels closer to Earth. And it's that sort of tension of where he's from. That obviously sent the sort of Fox News MAGA into meltdown because for the first time, they've realized that Superman is an immigrant. Superman being an immigrant has always been part of the story. So first of all, Superman is the first ever superhero. He was created in 1938 or 39 by Schuster and Siegel, who were two Jewish migrants to America. And the whole story of Superman is that he's a baby who was sent from the planet Krypton to Earth to do good things, and he gets his power from the yellow sun. But the immigrant story is fundamentally part of his story. In fact, as a kid who was an immigrant to this country, the reason you'll know I love Superman, if you come to my house, I've got like 14 statues of Superman in my living room, much to my wife's chagrin. Because that's the character I connected with the most, because I had come to a country where I didn't speak the language, didn't know the culture, and so I felt a pull. So he's always been my guy. Now, for people who are just discovering that Superman is actually a commentary on someone being more about the community that embraces them than where they're born or what they look like, you're just imbeciles who don't understand the character. Pick up a story. Look, if Superman's not for you, he's not for you, right? If you don't connect with that story, fine. But it has always been the case. The 1978 Chris Reeves Superman, all the way to Tom Welling's Superman. In fact, there's a great scene from Smallville and Tom Welling's Superman where his mum discovers an illegal Mexican immigrant in their barn, I think. And Clark Kent at the time, Superman, says to her, you know, I'm an illegal alien and you've been harboring me for 17 years illegally. And so obviously because, and this is what's so interestingly, I think, about this story and this film at this moment. One of the biggest criticisms Superman gets, and has historically got very different to Batman, is Superman is called a Boy Scout. He just always does the right thing for the right reasons. And he's big on this sort of kindness and doing good. And I think what James Gunn has done with this film is purposefully put people's noses out of joint, because we are so divided as a society, both here and in America, and because there is such anti-migrant sentiment. In fact, so Piers Morgan did this whole segment about whether it's super woke and people aren't going to go see it. And it's something that literally you could have seen in the film itself, because the film itself covers this.
And am I also right in thinking there is a row going on about this
Israel.
film? About Israel.
Yeah. So that's the second part. So the immigrant story, you know, if you're upset that Superman is an immigrant, get over it. That's always been the character. The second more interesting part, I think, is the film touches on a fictional country called Baravia invading its neighboring fictional country called Jahanpur. And Superman intervenes in that story. And that's what the whole film is about. Right. There's a lot of politics in the film because Lois Lane, who is a journalist and Superman's love interest and always has been, questions whether Superman thinks about the political implications of intervening in a foreign war. Now, in the film, Baravia is the US's biggest ally, and they're presented as a highly militarized, highly, powerful militarily country. And they invade Jahanpur, which its population is presented as brown people, with just flags in their hands and shovels in their hands and nothing to fight them back. There is no question that it draws parallels to Israel and Gaza. James Gunn isn't an idiot. You don't show a highly militarized country invading its neighbor, of which is basically defenseless and holding flags and shovels, without thinking through the implications of that. Now, also, if you've ever picked up a comic book, if you understand the character of Superman at all, I've got a news flash for all the people losing their minds. If Superman existed in real life, he would have intervened in Gaza on day one. Unquestionable. If you know the character of the Man of Tomorrow, of Big Blue, of the Man of Steel, he would have 100% intervened in Gaza and stopped Israeli forces from doing what they're doing, just like they did in Boravia. But as a result, what you've seen is people like Ben Shapiro and others melting down online because they're essentially calling it a political film. The reality is Superman just does the right thing. And I'm kind of doing a PR job for the film, but you should really see it, because there's two bits in the film that I think are really quite interesting. One is there's an interview scene between him and Lois where she says, you know, you didn't think about the political implications of what you've done. You can't just go into a foreign country, smash up tanks and stop a war. And what he says is, I don't care, people were going to die. And I had to stop that happening, in essence. I'm paraphrasing. And I think the message there is, you know, that we need to value human life above the politics and all that kind of stuff.
And the sense that, you know, this isn't your fight. You don't really understand it. It's more complex, and it's
you don't get to switch off.
You don't have to have an ideological view to see what's going on about whether Israel should exist. To see what's going on in Gaza. And think it needs to stop.
Exactly.
Right?
And again, there's another interesting point where Superman says Jahanpur, and they speak about Jahanpur being led by dictators and being an imperfect country. And he says, just because they're an imperfect country doesn't give Boravia, the neighboring country, the right to invade them and kill them. And there's no question. I mean, look, by the way, it's not just Israel-Palestine. There's huge Ukraine-Russia, and it's one of those things where, you know, I've seen a lot of pro-Israelis online saying, you know, he's clearly talking about Israel with Boravia. And the point is, if the shoe fits, you should really reflect.
Totally.
Right?
What, you know, it's like that, you know, are we the bad guys?
Yes, that's it. And it is, yes.
Maybe,
yes, First of all, yes, you are. Second of all, if Superman existed, he would 100% intervene. And three, maybe reflect on why you see the side that you put the football shirt on and support in the evil dictatorship that invades.
It's funny, I mean, we have this row, and, you know, I brought up Paddington before, but that is something, you know, it seems comparative to me because the nation loves Paddington, right? The UK, we know we love Paddington. Again, he is a refugee.
Yes.
He is very obviously a refugee. He arrives in the UK with his little suitcase and a tag around his neck that says, please look after this bear. And yet he is held up as some kind of like bastion of British culture, often by people on the right of like, oh, I just miss the days when people cared about Paddington. And it's like, the whole point of Paddington was to teach you guys some compassion. So there's also a cognitive dissonance that can happen.
I mean, the main question, if the main question is Superman a political film, my answer would be Superman is a political character. He is an immigrant and a refugee that's sent to a foreign country. He intervenes in a foreign war that you can liken to Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Gaza, whichever one you want, if the shoe fits. And he spends this entire film and in the entire comics fighting a literal billionaire. Lex Luthor being... So the whole point is it's a refugee fighting a billionaire.
He's a bit Elon Musk-like.
Oh, by the way, my wife said this to me 5 years ago. She said, even before Elon Musk started his trajectory, right? She was like, that guy is Lex Luthor in the making. Because... And so, of course, Superman is a political character. He's a refugee who got sent to this land to do good, and he spends his time fighting billionaires and stopping foreign wars. So, you know, if you have a problem with Superman, fuck you, man.
Well,
everyone else go watch the movie.
Ali managed to get a full segment out of that, and do you know what? I thought that was great.
Go watch
convinced
it.
Me, I'm going to go see it.
It's amazing, and the best scene in the film, and I'll end on this. There's a moment in which Lois says to him, because they're talking about the fact that she was a punk rock kid, and he said, "Oh, I'm kind of punk rock," and she said, "You're definitely not punk rock, because everyone you meet, you think, literally every human being you meet, you think is the most beautiful person you've ever met." And Superman says, maybe that's the real punk rock.
Wow. Food for thought.
Right. Sorry, I was just
Wrap us
reflecting
up, Ali.
on
Come on,
what
talk
a beautiful
us out.
movie and a
I'm
beautiful
going to
character.
go see Superman.
That's it from Politics Uncensored today. Join us next Thursday at 5 p.m, where we unwrap the week's political talking points. You can stay up to date by following the show at Politics Uncensored UK on social media, where you can find me at Ali Milani UK.
And you can find me at